name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Good morning.
Good morning.
Outstanding. In the late 4th century, just after the legalization of Christianity and before the schism over the language of Chalcedon, two friends made a road trip, the type of which could only happen in their day and age. Their names are bequeathed to us as John Cassian and his friend Germanus, and they're known to us as saints. But before these young men had hymns and feast days on the calendar, the two of them left their home and headed out on the open road because they shared a common dream. They aspired to not just read about men of great spiritual stature, they wanted to attain the same high spiritual stature for themselves. And so the two boyhood friends got out, as it were, on the road. They left their native Romania, traveled effortlessly into Christian Palestine, and there, learning from the monks there, they quickly heard from the holy men of Palestine about the already famous great old men of the Egyptian desert, the great desert fathers. And so John Cassian and Germanus quickly packed up all of their things and once again headed out on the road, traveling down the dusty Middle Eastern trails until they finally arrived in southern Egypt and learned at the feet of some of the greatest holy men and theological minds and the greatest monastics that the world has ever produced. They chronicled the wisdom that they came across. John Cassian would end his life as a deacon in the city of Rome. Among his many important contributions to the Orthodox and ancient Christian world was a very comprehensive list that he acquired from the old men in Egypt, from the Desert Fathers. For he'd written down from them a list of 8 demons that plagued the monks, and instructions on how to overcome each one. This original list, with all of its details, can be found in our Philokalia. It was also found in the late 6th century by Gregory, Pope of Rome, who enjoyed it, who liked it, who edited it and adjusted it, and gave it to his section of the world as a list not of 8, but 7 deadly sins. There is perhaps no image more iconic, more beloved in American culture than the road trip. Our love affair with the great and open road, holding as much adventure as the unknown, doesn't stretch back only to the 50s with Jack Kerouac writing On the Road. And it goes back farther than the anonymous Russian pilgrim of the 19th century, but it stretches all the way back into antiquity. Because there's something primal about this drive, this desire to push out into the unknown and explore what lies beyond the bounds of that with which we're familiar. Every journey, every trip, dare I say, pilgrimage, is defined by a scope, and that scope is the problem that pilgrimage seeks to address. That scope, that end, we call that the telos, the end or scope of something, its purpose, its reason for being. In both classical philosophy and in theology, when we speak of the end, the telos, we're not telling you where something stops. We're telling you why it's there, what it's heading towards, what its purpose is. So what was the end for John Cassian and Germanus? Was it Romania? Was the end Palestine? Was their telos Egypt and the Desert Fathers? Was it Rome? The scope that defined these young men's journey across the ancient and briefly unified Christian world was that they had the goal of becoming great men of prayer. That was the compass. and the criteria which guided their steps and their choices which they made across that journey. This understanding of the term the end, the telos, was so well ingrained and so well understood that when St. Paul wrote in his epistle that Christ is the telos, the end of the law, it would have been immediately understood. But a telos, an end, is an easy thing to forget. It's not difficult to forget why we're doing what we're doing in the first place. And so we run into a familiar danger along with our Old Testament counterparts. Because as easy as it is to forget our reason, our telos, our end, or why we're here, just so simple it is to also make all of the minutiae, all of the details, all of the externals, and the little things about the spiritual life ends in and of themselves. The reason why we do this, the reason why we treat minutiae this way, it's very simple. Very often, these are the things that we can actually control. These are the things we can actually do something about. So we enshrine them, we encode them, we make them unquestionable, long after we ever forgot why they were there to begin with. There is a famous story about a man who marries a wonderful woman. And he notices that whenever she goes to bake ham, for reasons he quite doesn't understand, she cuts off both ends. So he goes to her one day and he asks her, he says, "Honey, why do you cut off both ends before putting the ham in the pan and the pan in the oven?" And she says, "I don't know. That's the way my mother always did it. I learned it from her. That's the way I do it." Very good. So he goes and he asks his mother-in-law. And he says, "Why does she cut off both ends of the ham before putting it in the pan and baking it in the oven?" And the mother-in-law says, "I don't know. That's what I saw my mother do. That's just the way I learned it. That's what we do." And it just so happens that her mother was still alive. So the man goes to her mother and he asks her, why, respectfully, why all of the women in the family have this very peculiar custom of cutting off both ends of the ham before baking. And the old woman kind of chuckles a little bit and she tells him, "Well, you know, when I first got married, among the wedding gifts, there was a beautiful oven pan. But the pan was only this big. And all of the hams were this big. And I didn't have money to waste buying a new pan. So I just started cutting the ends off in order to make it fit." A mere 2 generations in, and we've already forgotten the telos. We already forgot the reason why we're doing this. I fear that the correction of St. Paul in his epistle may very often possibly apply to us. For he says, "Behold, I confess that they have a great zeal for God, but it is not katepignosi, not according to knowledge. And therefore, seeking to establish their own righteousness, they fail to submit to the righteousness of God." My brothers and sisters, it is not difficult to enter into the church. It's not difficult to throw open a map and head out on the road. It is difficult to remember why you're here and why you do what we do. And in fact, it is very easy to never know in the first place. It is very easy to become zealous about all of the externals. We know that on this feast day, we have these things. On this feast day, we bring these items to the priest to be blessed. Now we're blessing homes. Now we bless palms. But if some weary traveler, if some pilgrim should happen by this way, or better still, should our sons or daughters come home and wish to introduce to us a significant other, and they come here and they see the beauty that we have and all the rich and gorgeous customs that we've inherited, and they ask why. Have we prepared an answer better for them? Then I don't know. Christ is the telos, the end of the law, both in the Old Testament, in our canons, in our worship, in our service, for everything else that we do. I want to be abundantly clear. There is absolutely nothing wrong, nothing at all, with all of the beautiful and pious customs that have been handed down to us from our fathers and that Holy Mother Church has preserved in order to make Christ visible, incarnate among us. Nothing wrong with it. But the zeal for handing that down has to be katepignosi, coupled with knowledge. A pilgrimage is not cheap. Pilgrimage is not a cheap journey. It will cost you. It will leave you different than it found you. And we have to realize before we head out that we're willing or not to pay what it costs. Christ today finds himself on such a journey with his apostles through the land of the Gerasenes, and that place had a demon problem. Jesus confronts the demons. He casts them into a herd of pigs. The herd of pigs rush over the edge of a cliff and die. But I have to tell you that the demons are not the villain in this story. They're simply doing what demons do. They're being demons. The pigs are also not the villains. They bear no guilt. The great villain in this story is actually the townspeople. The pigs are dead. Jesus has cost them money. But more than that, he has taken from them their status quo. Taken from them what they know and they're used to. They knew how to live with the evil of the demons. Now what will they do? So faced for the first time with a free, clear, and open road in front of them, unobstructed, their response is to beg Jesus to leave. Keep your eyes on the end, on the telos. For he who perseveres to the end will be saved.